faithful. Yes, terrific. It was just about 34 years ago that this thing opened. And nobody had an idea that it was going to do what it did. So I certainly didn't. 28 days and less than $1 million, and it worked. So, and the music didn't hurt. So I hope you enjoyed it, and really thank you again for getting a print of this and of Joe, which is really a miracle. And I look forward to yakking about it later. No, I buy into it. And how can you beat that music?
I think the moment that I'm always surprised by, that I was so surprised by when I saw it again, is when Talia's trying to save her watching. So she comes in halfway through the fight, you can't quite look. That's the moment, like, it really, that's a kind of higher level emotion. I wasn't really.
Well, it wasn't supposed to end that way. The original script had them, the crowd carried Apollo out of the ring and carried Rocky out, and as Rocky was going by Adrian, he would lean over and pull her up, and the last line of the script was they rode out on the shoulders of everyone in the happiest night of their lives. So when we came to shoot that, and they carried out Apollo, the assistant director came up and said, "We don't have enough extras to carry out Rocky." Well, obviously the same folks that carried out Apollo were going to carry out Rocky, but Sylvester heard this and he said, "Wait a minute, maybe they don't carry out Rocky. He lost the fight. Maybe he just walks down the aisle and there's Adrian and they join hands and they just walk out." I thought, gee, that sounds pretty poetic. Let's do that. And if you remember, the original poster had the boy and the girl walking away from camera, hand in hand. So we shot that. We started cutting the movie, and at a certain point, Bill Conti brings in the cue for the last cue for the movie. That great piece at the end. So I listen to that and I say, "Wow, that's terrific." But I haven't got the footage to go with that. This is like those Clairol commercials where the boy and the girl would rush across the fields of daisies and embrace and so on. I said, why don't we keep Rocky in the ring and bring Adrian up, and she'll start yelling Rocky and he'll start yelling Adrian, and like a wounded bull elephant, and they'll clinch and say, "I love you," and we're out, and we'll go with the music. So they didn't think much of that idea. They said, "No, people hear that you're reshooting, they'll think they've got a turkey and so forth." So I pleaded and I cut some footage together against Bill's cue, and they finally said, "Well, all right." Meanwhile, they were getting all ready to shoot New York, New York. And Marty Scorsese had his camera package in the producer's office, so unbeknownst to him, we borrowed the camera. He gave us half a day back at the stadium, and we had like 20 extras walking in front of the camera to make a crowd. And it worked. And if it hadn't, we wouldn't be here tonight. It was Bill Conti's last cue that inspired that ending.
It's going to be one of the first times the music wrote the ending.
That's right.
Well, before we continue the Q&A, there's something...
Well, it's always better to do that, to have the music and cut to the music, and the montage where they're running and he finally runs up the stairs. I did that to not that music, and so Bill saw the kind of footage that I had, so he wrote that cue, and then I recut it to go with that, because it's much easier to cut the film to go with the music than the other way around.
It's definitely one of the great sync points.
Yeah.
There's something you showed me right before we came up here. So we were talking back about all the Q&As you've done. So we actually have a little bit of footage to roll. You've talked so much about Rocky over the years that John's son, I guess, took up some footage. Why don't you explain, actually?
Yes, well, Anthony, I've been collecting these interviews that have been going on for a long time, and I get the same questions, and I give them the same answers. So I collected this stuff, so at a certain point I said to Anthony, I said, listen, why don't you cut all this stuff together and you'll see me grow old as I'm answering the same questions with the same answers. And he did, and that's on YouTube. He did a great job.
What did Father Rocky?
Yes, well, Father Rocky's another story. I was a production manager in an Italian movie that was shot here, and I also played the part of a priest. They gave me a collar and so forth. And then they put Italian in my mouth when they dubbed the picture. And this was in like 1964 or something like that. So I tracked it down recently and showed it to Anthony, and he had this idea. So that's what you're going to see. You're going to see me as the priest with Anthony's subtitles.
Yeah, and it may fill in some of your questions before we
And there was a Polaroid tape of Sylvester at a certain point before his trunks had been made, and that Polaroid was given to the guy who made the posters, and he didn't know that the trunks were going to be a different color. Meanwhile, the night before the fight in the script, Sylvester goes to Mickey's gym and watches a newsreel of Apollo's fights, and he gets intimidated by this, and that's what makes him realize he has got a chance to win. Well, we never had the time or money to shoot these newsreel footage, and I also knew that we were never going to have the extras to fill up that big sports arena. So I suggested to the producers, look, rather than go and have them watch this newsreel footage that we don't have, why don't we have them go to the arena at night with all the lights on? And you'll see how huge and it's empty. It's supposed to be empty. And when we have the fight the next day, the audience will remember how big the place is, and will be dark, and they'll imagine the place is full. So they said, well, okay. Well, just about that time, the posters arrived, and they had the wrong color trunks. And we didn't have the time or money to paint them properly, so I said, more genius. Why don't we have the fight promoter show up? He complains. Rocky complains to the promoter, and the promoter says, "Yeah, don't worry, nobody will notice." And poor Rocky gets more disrespect, and the audience feels more sympathy for the guy because nobody cares about him, and that's how that came.
Now, there's a lot of similar stories like that, like the robe that's too big, which I read about, and then so he improvised the line about do I look weird in this robe?
And if you call attention to stuff like that, the audience thinks you did it on purpose.
Well, one of the things that's sort of telling is it's very interesting. You had this. I've always wondered what the writing and what kind of relationship you had with Sylvester Stallone, having obviously produced so much. I mean, you're talking about him writing out the entire fight. You can have that kind of talk with him. It's such a passion project. I heard you wrote over 300 pages over time. How did you kind of work with him night in and night out to kind of develop Rocky's character, since he was bringing so much to it, and you had to kind of bring your own son? What was that collaboration?
There is nothing like a starving actor. They are very cooperative. They are appreciative. They're not obsessed with the size of their trailer. There was no trailers. Sylvester was a starving actor. He had come and auditioned for me over the years a few times, going back when he was a student at Miami University. So we had some history. And I saw Lords of Flatbush, which he did a terrific job in. So he was very easy to talk with, and we all had the same idea of who this guy was. Like when he comes into the manager's office, where he thinks he's going to be a sparring partner, and he says, you know, how would you like to fight the champ? Well, originally he said, oh wow, that would be terrific. So going to work that day, I'm thinking, you know, Rocky isn't educated, but he's not dumb, and he would know that he has no business fighting this guy. So he would say no. Now, the promoter has to con him into it, and we feel more sympathy for this guy. because he's being taken advantage of. So I read that by Sylvester. He liked the idea, changed a few lines, and the last minute we did it like that.
Was there? I've never seen a film where there was more conscientious effort put into making the audience identify and like the guy. I mean, right in the beginning with like the girl, which was actually another one of my favorite kind of moments when they walk home together, and he's just doing nothing but pouring his heart out and being nice.
Oh, and the producers wanted to take that scene out. It stops the picture. You know, the little girl has nothing to do with anything. Forget it. You know, it just stops the picture. So Pauline Kael, who was the big movie critic at the time, had seen an early screening of the picture, and with the Marie scene in it. And I said, you know what, the producers are going to take that out. He goes, oh, why would they know? That's where you hook them. I said, well, you might want to tell them. And she did, and it stayed in.
Wow. That's a great scene.
It's a very tenuous business.
Wow. I'm really glad because up to that point, he's sort of, you know, you don't know. He's kind of violent, you know, he's a bruiser, and like there's that's really a key moment in the film.
Oh, yeah. I had no interest in boxing. My friend convinced me to read it. Well, the second or third pages, he's talking at cuff and link, and I was charmed. I always thought of it as a character study, a very sympathetic character, and a love story. And the boxing was the background, like the Civil War in Gone with the Wind. It's always about the people, and Rocky was a terrific, sympathetic character.
Does anybody? A little bit. Does anybody have any questions for John about Rocky, or somebody shot a hand right up?
Yeah. Is there a particular anecdote during the making of the film where you realized you really had something special?
No. No, I remember we had the thing cut to the last reel. We didn't have the last reel, and at the end of the ninth reel, Apollo gets knocked down. So we showed it at a few universities and stuff, and it ended with, and everybody wanted to know what happened. And that was about the extent of it. And we finally got the last reel cut, and I invited about 80 or 90 friends to MGM over in Culver City when it was before it was Sony to see the thing. And it took forever to mix the last reel, but we finally had the thing ready. About 2 hours, these folks had been sitting in the room waiting for the movie. They finally we run it, and they freak out. It was great. So I'm tickled to death. I walk out, the producers are standing there, and so I say, well, we got a lot of work to do. And they said, yes, I think we ought to. And I said, wait a second, I'm kidding. It's fine. I said, no, those are all your friends. That's the only reason they react. I said, well, wait a second. Before we make it any better, why don't we show it to a bunch of strangers and see what they think? So fortunately, they went along with that, and a couple of days later, we had about 500 strangers in the Cary Grant Theater at MGM, and it was the same reaction. And they decided not to make it any better.
Let's over here.
How difficult was it to stage the fight without a guy presumably getting hurt?
I'm sorry, how was it to what?
How difficult was it to make the fight without the actors getting hurt?
Oh, well, we rehearsed. When I started working on the movie, I looked at a lot of fight films, and the fighting looked so phony. I said, wait a second, if we're going to make this thing look real, I said we need a lot of rehearsal. So I got the producers to give us 2 weeks of rehearsal before we started to shoot, so they could rehearse the fight, and then we were going to shoot the fight at the end of the 28-day schedule. So the first day we get the guys into the ring to start rehearsing. One says, I'll do this, the other one, I said, wait a second. Sylvester, why don't you go home and write this thing out, lefts, rights, whatever you want, and we'll learn that like a ballet, like Father Rocky said. And he went for that idea, and that's what he did. He came back the next day with all these lefts and rights, and the first round is broken into 3 sections, the A, B, and that's what we learned. And I had a little 8mm movie camera, and I would take movies of them every day and show it to them. And I said, boys, we got to get better than that. And if you want to lose a few pounds, it couldn't hurt. And by looking at this footage over and over and over again, they got better and better and better. And I showed the stuff to Bill Connie on my little 8mm projector and slowed it down so the punches would go like that. And I played some Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony behind it. And I said, this will move this thing up. It'll make it majestic. It will make it more important. You put Beethoven behind leader, and the leader looks important. So Bill went for that idea, and that's why we had this sort of classical sound. $25,000 bought the whole score, everything, including his theme. When we had one session with about 35 musicians, and when the producers walked in, they saw this and said, Bill, how are you going to make any money? But he saw the value of that big orchestra, and he was very wise and held on to the publishing, so it worked out.